So aside from the two major conventions, the Rio and the United Nations Conference on Human Development, they have also come up with another convention, which is the Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal. So this convention focuses on the transportation of waste from developing countries to less developed countries, or rather developed countries to developing countries and underdeveloped countries. So the convention was opened for signature on March 22, 1989, and then it was entered to force on May 5, 1992. And then this is an international treaty that was designed to reduce the movements of hazardous waste between nations, and specifically to prevent transfer of hazardous waste from developed to less developed countries. So there. This is an agreement that aims to reduce the movements, or to lessen the transfer of hazardous waste from, again, developed countries to less developed countries, or prevent or prohibit the transfer of hazardous waste from developed to less developed countries. So this convention intended to minimize the amount and toxicity of waste generated to ensure the environmentally sound management as closely as possible to the source of generation, and to assist the less developed countries in environmentally sound management of the hazardous and other waste they generate. So this convention aims to lessen the amount or the production of the toxic waste so that it will not harm the environment, and it also helps manage the production of, or the disposal of toxic waste in less developed countries. So there was an amendment because of this law, or this treaty, because initially Basel Convention did not really prohibit the transport of hazardous or toxic waste, but rather it requires only prior consent or prior notice from one country to another. For example, the Philippines will be bringing toxic waste to Malaysia, so it is not prohibited, but rather you will ask consent from the Malaysia that, or you will inform the Malaysia that you will be bringing such waste to them. And they are also justifying, most of these institutions who are transferring toxic waste are justifying the transfer as a way of recycling. So that is why there was a Basel Ban Amendment, which totally prohibits the export of hazardous waste from a list of developed, mostly OECD countries, to developing countries. So this ban applies to export for any reason, including recycling. So because of this Basel Ban Amendment, it is already prohibited to transport or export hazardous waste from one country to another. So the drawback of this convention, of course, is because of the initial adaptation. Again, as stated earlier, that the transport of hazardous waste is not prohibited, but rather it will only require a prior informed consent. And a lot of industries are also abusing the justification of recycling, or they're using recycling to justify why they're transferring hazardous waste to less developed countries. So when the Basel Ban Amendment was created, there are countries who that opposed this amendment, and two of these are Australia and Canada. Another convention is Convention on Biological Diversity, which focuses more on the preservation of the biodiversity in the world. So this was opened for signature at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro on June 5, 1992 and entered into force on December 29, 1993. So, the Convention on Biological Diversity recognized for the very first time international law that the conservation of biological diversity is a common concern of humankind, and it is an integral part of development process. The agreement covers all ecosystem species and genetic resources. So it was the first time that they recognized the fact that biodiversity is important to to humankind, and it is important also to the development of the country. So the Convention on Biological Diversity has three main goals, which are conservation of biological diversity or biodiversity, and then sustainable use of its components, and for fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from genetic resources. The third kind of convention is the convention that gives importance to endangered species. So it is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or called CITES, or also known as Washington Convention. So this is a multilateral treaty drafted as a result of a resolution adopted in 1963 at the meeting of the members of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So the CITES aim to ensure that international trade in specimen of wild animals and plants does not threaten the survival of the species in the wild, and it accords varying degrees of protection to more than 33,000 species of animals and plants. So in order to ensure that the general agreement on tariffs and trades was not violated, the Secretariat of the GATT was consulted during the drafting process of this convention. So this convention aims to make sure that international trade of specimen will not harm the survival of the species in that area. So this treaty or this convention works by subjecting international trade in specimen of listed species to certain controls. This required that all import, export, re-export, and introduction from the sea of species covered by the convention has to be authorized through a permitting system. So this means that, for example, you are a researcher from Malaysia, you want to study the tarsiers, so you want to bring tarsiers to Malaysia. So you cannot just bring the tarsiers to Malaysia because it's considered endangered species. So you have to secure a permit to do that, and they are also limiting the number of species or specimens that you can take. And for example, you're studying already the tarsiers and you were able to breed them and raise another set of species of tarsiers different from the original ones, and you want them to blend with the original species here in the Philippines. You cannot also bring the new species of tarsiers here in the Philippines and mix them with the regular species without securing permit. So this is to ensure that the biodiversity is not being threatened or is protected. So that's the end of my report, and most of my resources are online, and that's it. Thank you very much.